Hello students, this is Adarsh and let's study about the first chapter of your biology, that is crop production. Now, before getting into deeper explanation, let's study about few important terms. Now, first is autotrophs. Now, they are the organisms which can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Next is heterotrophs. Now, they are the organisms that cannot prepare their own food and they depend on other green plants or other plants for food. Now, next is crop production. Now, cultivation of one type of plant on large scale is called as crop production. Now, next is agriculture. Now, practice of cultivating land for growing crops and raising animals for food or profit is called agriculture, and it not only provide food but also provide fiber, medicines, flowers and ornamental plants. Now, next is agricultural practices. Now, the activities used for growing crops to maintain a steady supply of food is called as agricultural practices. Now, next is that different crops require different climatic conditions, temperature and duration of sunlight, that is photoperiod. Now, on that basis, crops are mainly divided into two types, that is kharif crops and rabi crops. Now, crops that are grown during the rainy season from June to October like paddy, soyabean, maize, pigeon pea, green gram, black gram and cotton gram, etc. are kept under the category of kharif crops, whereas crops that are grown during winter season from November to April like wheat, gram, peas, mustard, linseed, etc. are kept under the category of rabi crops. Now, there are various practices that are required for growing crops that are as follows. First is preparation of soil, next is sowing of seed, next is addition of manures and fertilizers, next is irrigation, that is supply of water, then crop protection from weeds and pests, next is harvesting, and the last is storage. Now, let's study about the first point, that is preparation of soil. Now, preparation of soil is the first step before growing of crop. It helps to turn the soil and loosen it to allow the root to penetrate deep into it. The loosening of the soil helps in the growth of several soil microbes and earthworms, etc., which enrich the soil with humus and other essential nutrients. Now, the process of turning or loosening the soil is called as plowing. This is done using a plow or tractor. Now, what are the advantages of plowing? Plowing has following advantage. First is it provides air circulation so that roots can respire easily. Roots can penetrate deeper into the soil, thus hold the plant firmly. Plowing enhances the water retaining capacity of the soil. Plowing uproots the weeds growing in the field. And the last, it helps in growth of microbes, earthworm, etc., which enrich the nutrients. Now, plowing field has big pieces of soil called crumbs. Crumbs are crushed with wooden plank. Now, next is sowing of seed. Now, sowing is the process of putting the seeds into the soil for growing crops, and we use quality seeds for sowing. Now, there are different ways for sowing, there are different ways of sowing the seed. First, sowing which is done manually by hand by scattering seeds in the field is called as broadcasting. Next, by use of mechanical equipment like seed drill. Now, seeds of few plants like rice, tomato, chili, etc. is first grown in a separate area called as nursery and then transplanted in the fields when seedling is formed, then which is called as transplantation. Now transplantation helps to cultivate or select only healthy plants, and transplantation ensures uniform availability of sunlight, water and nutrients to the plant. Now manuring. What is manure? Manure are substances which are added to provide nutrients for the healthy growth of crop plants. Now as you all know that plants consume nutrients from soil and make it infertile. So to replenish fertility of the soil, manuring is done. So there are several methods by which the nutrients can be replenished. First is field fallow. In this the field is left uncultivated for 1 or 2 seasons. Second is crop rotation. Now the growing of different crops in succession on a piece of land to avoid exhausting the soil nutrient and to control weeds, pests and diseases. Next is manures. Now what is manure? Manure is an organic substance like waste of animal and plants. And the last is fertilizers. Fertilizers are the inorganic substances that are enriching the soil with nutrients. And the last is vermicomposting. It is a process of using earthworm to prepare manure from plant waste, that is dry leaves, vegetable peels and etc. Now let's see few differences between fertilizers and manure. Now fertilizers are commercially available plant nutrients, whereas manure is a natural substances prepared by the decomposition of dead and decaying plants and animals. Now fertilizers can be organic or inorganic in nature, whereas manure is known to have a large quantity of organic materials and very little amount of plant nutrients. Fertilizers ensure healthy growth and development of plants by providing them with nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, etc., whereas manure helps in enriching the soil with organic matter and nutrients. Now, the addition of fertilizers to the soil requires special guidelines such as dose time, post-addition precaution and etc. to be followed, whereas the addition of manure does not require any special guidelines. A fertilizer does not provide any humus to the soil, whereas manure provides humus to the soil and increases soil fertility. Now, let's study about fertilizer. If fertilizers excessive use causes water pollution and it cannot replenish organic matter of the soil, whereas manure protects the environment and helps in recycling farm waste. Now let's study about the role of leguminous plants in increasing the nitrogen content of the soil. Now leguminous plants such as pea, beans and soya bean etc. has the ability to fix gaseous nitrogen into nitrogenous salt, which reduce requirement of nitrogen fertilizer for plant. Now leguminous plant have root nodules on the roots that are associated with bacteria like rhizobium that fixes gaseous nitrogen into nitrogenous salts. Now let's study about the irrigation, that is the next topic. Now what is irrigation? Supply of water to crops at appropriate interval is called as irrigation. Now the time and frequency of irrigation varies according to different seasons, crops and soil types. Now different kinds of irrigation systems are used to supply water to agricultural land. They are wells, canals, rivers, tanks and check dams and etc. First is wells. There are two types of wells called dug wells and tube wells. Now in dug wells, water is collected from water bearing strata, and in tube wells water is collected from deeper strata. Now canals. In this system, canals receive water from reservoirs or river and distributes it to the field. Next is river lift system. Now in this system, water is being lifted from river with the help of pump sets or any machine to irrigate fields close to the rivers. Next is tanks. These are the small storage reservoirs which supply water to the fields. And the last is check dams. They are used to stop rainwater from flowing away and helps to increase groundwater level and reduce soil erosion. Now, irrigation of crops. Now basically there are two modern methods of irrigation, that is, first is sprinkler irrigation and next is drip system or drip irrigation. Now let's study about sprinkler irrigation. Now in this method, water is supplied using pipes to one or more central location within the field. When water is allowed to flow under high pressure with the help of a pump, it gets sprinkled on the crops. This system is more useful on uneven land having fewer water supplies. And the next is drip irrigation or drip system. In this system, water is delivered at or near the roots of plants drop by drop. This is the most efficient method of irrigation as there is no wastage of water at all. This method is important in areas where water availability is poor or where there is water scarcity. Now next is waterlogging. Now waterlogging is excessive supply of water to plant which reduces air in the soil. So next topic is plant protection management. Now crops in the field are damaged by weeds, insect pests and diseases. Now weeds are unwanted plants which grow in the field, or weeds are the undesirable plants that may grow along with the crop. Now the removal of these weeds is called as weeding. Now protection from weed. Weeding can be done by following methods. First is manual removal. It involves uprooting weeds by help of khurpi or any manual equipment. Next is tilling before sowing. It involves uprooting weeds by plowing field before sowing that dry up and mixed up with the soil. Next is weedicides. Now weedicides are the chemicals which kill weeds but not harm the crop. And next is cutting weeds close to the ground. Now protection from pests. Pests are strayed animals, birds and insects. Animals and birds are scared away by beating drums and fixing scarecrows in the field. Now pests are organisms which specifically attack and damage the crops. Example, rats, locusts and etc. Now what are pesticides? Pesticides are chemical which are sprayed on the crops to kill pests. It is done manually or small aircraft by using ladybirds, and wasps are method for biological control of pests. Now next is crop preservation. Now the objective of crop preservation is to retain crop quality during post-harvest storage. Now drying, canning and freezing are some of the method of preservation. Now they compete with the crop for food, space and sunlight, and use nutrient and reduce crop yield. Insect pests cause damage to the root, stem and leaves, suck cell sap and bore into stems and fruits. They can reduce crop yield. Now diseases in plants are caused by pathogens like virus, bacteria and fungi and reduces crop yield. Now weeds, insect pests and diseases can be controlled by using chemicals like weedicides, pesticides, fungicides and etc. They are sprayed on crop plants or used for treating seeds and soil. Since these chemicals are poisonous, So excessive use of these chemicals are extremely dangerous. Now, what is harvesting? Harvesting is cutting and gathering of crops after maturation. Now, next is threshing. Threshing is the process of separating grains or seeds from the cut crop or chaff. It is done after harvesting the crop. It is either done manually by sickle or by a machine called harvester or thresher. It is also carried out with the help of a machine known as combine. Now this machine is a combined harvester and thresher. It harvests plants as well as cleans grains. Now what is winnowing? Winnowing is the process of separating chaff from grain using air. And the last is the storage of grain. The factor responsible for the damage and loss of grains are following. Now first is biotic factor, that is living factors, that is includes like bacteria, fungi, insects, rodents and etc. And second is abiotic factor or non-living factor like moisture and temperature in the place of storage. Now, before storage, the grains are cleaned and dried in sunlight to remove moisture, and the storage places are fumigated to kill pests. Now, storage of grains is done by Food Corporation of India, that is FCI, and state warehousing corporations. Now, perishable items are stored in large cold storages or deep freezers.